The lion's den was not punishment, a modern retelling inspired by the story of Daniel, written by Susanna Sunday. There are houses where people whisper when they mention certain illnesses: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe depression, psychosis, autoimmune disease, chronic pain, autism, epilepsy, dementia, addiction, neurological disorders. There are conditions that make people uncomfortable because they cannot be solved quickly, explained neatly, or wrapped in a tidy testimony. And so families living inside these realities often begin carrying two burdens instead of one: the suffering itself and the suspicion surrounding it. People may not say it directly anymore, but the old question still lingers beneath many conversations. What went wrong? What opened the door? Surely this cannot happen in a godly family. But scripture keeps telling a different story. Daniel was not in the lion's den because God hated him. Daniel was not abandoned. Daniel was not cursed. Daniel was not rejected. Daniel was beloved. And yet, beloved people can still find themselves inside dens. Chapter 1. The House. Everyone quietly talks about. In a narrow street lined with ordinary houses lived the Mensa family. From the outside, they looked functional. The father, Joseph, worked in administration. The mother, Lydia, was a nurse. They attended church quietly. They paid bills late, but eventually, they smiled politely when neighbors greeted them. But inside the house, life had become complicated. Their eldest son, Kwesi, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia at 23. The diagnosis came after months of confusion. At first, it was small things: sleeplessness, withdrawal, suspicion, long silence. Then came voices, fear, paranoia. One night, Joseph found Kwesi standing in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, whispering urgently to someone who was not there. Joseph's heart froze. Kwesi? His son turned slowly. They are watching me. Joseph tried to remain calm. Who? Kwesi looked terrified. The people in the walls. That was the night. Everything changed. Chapter 2. Lydia the nurse, who could not heal her own son. Lydia spent her days caring for other people. At the hospital, she was competent, composed, respected. She knew medication schedules, symptoms, treatment pathways, emergency protocols. But at home, she sat on the bathroom floor some nights and wept silently because knowledge could not remove her son's suffering. Mothers like Lydia become clinicians in their own homes. Part mother, part therapist, part pharmacist, part social worker, part crisis responder. But nobody teaches them how to survive the grief of watching someone they love disappear into confusion and return exhausted from battles invisible to everyone else. Lydia blamed herself quietly. Did I miss signs? Did I work too much? Did I pray too little? Was there something in our family line? Had God become angry with them? Even in church, comments hurt. We will pray against every spirit. Just claim his healing. Do not accept that diagnosis. Some meant well, some did not understand, but Lydia noticed something painful. Very few people stayed long enough to sit with the family after the prayers ended. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and share mercy daily with every family who needs to hear this. Chapter 3. The younger sister. Kwesi's younger sister, Alma, learned early how to read atmospheres. She knew which footsteps meant peace and which meant trouble. She knew when her brother's eyes looked distant. She knew how to lower her voice when the house felt fragile. She loved her brother fiercely, but she was also afraid sometimes. Afraid he might wander, afraid he might disappear into himself, afraid people would mock him, afraid the family would never feel normal again. One evening, after Kwesi had another difficult episode, Alma asked her mother quietly, "Mummy, is God punishing us?" Lydia looked up sharply. No, but then, why is this happening? Lydia sat beside her daughter. There are moments when parents realize children hear far more than adults think. She took a long breath. Do you remember Daniel? The lion's den? Yes. Daniel did nothing wrong. Alma nodded slowly. He was faithful to God. Yes, Lydia whispered. And still he ended up in the den. Alma frowned. Then why did God allow it? Lydia looked toward Kwesi's closed bedroom door. I think sometimes God's mercy is not that we never enter hard places. Sometimes his mercy is that he enters them with us. Chapter 4. The den. The hospital psychiatric ward felt like a modern lion's den to Joseph. Locked doors, harsh lighting, plastic chairs. long waiting hours, fear sitting beside exhaustion. He watched his son through reinforced glass one afternoon and felt helpless in ways language cannot fully describe. Kwesi looked thinner, tired, ashamed. When he noticed his father, he tried to smile. Joseph nearly broke apart at the effort. Some families live inside dens nobody sees. The den of chronic illness, the den of medical debt, the den of caregiving exhaustion, the den of mental illness, the den of watching someone survive but not fully recover, the den of unanswered prayers. And just like Daniel, many of these families are quietly asking, Lord, where are you in this place? Chapter 5. The lions. The lions are not always diseases themselves. Sometimes the lions are stigma, isolation, financial pressure, caregiver burnout, judgment, fear of the future, the exhaustion of constant vigilance, the grief of altered dreams, the silence of friends who slowly disappear because suffering makes them uncomfortable. Joseph discovered this slowly. At first, people called often, then less, then rarely. Some avoided the family entirely because they did not know what to say. Others reduced Kwesi to his diagnosis. But Joseph still saw his son. Not merely a condition, not merely a psychiatric patient. His son, the same boy who once laughed loudly watching football, the same boy who loved music, the same boy who used to pray over meals, awkwardly, but sincerely. Illness had changed many things, but it had not removed his humanity. Chapter 6. Daniel's quiet habit. One of the things Joseph loved most about Daniel's story was this verse. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day, and prayed, and gave thanks before his God. Daniel chapter 6 verse 10. Daniel prayed before the den, not only after deliverance. That struck Joseph deeply, because in suffering, gratitude often feels unnatural. But slowly, the family began noticing mercies. Small mercies, ordinary mercies, holy mercies. One morning, Kwesi slept peacefully. That was mercy. One evening, he sat at the table and ate with the family calmly. That was mercy. 1 week passed without crisis. Mercy. Amma laughed again. Mercy. Lydia drank tea while it was still hot. Mercy. Joseph came home from work and found quiet instead of chaos. Mercy. Not complete healing, not yet, but mercy nonetheless. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and share mercy daily. Your share could reach a family that needs this message tonight. Chapter 7. The Church Elder. One Sunday, an elderly church member named Mr. Boateng visited. Not with theories, not with dramatic prophecies, not with accusation. He simply brought food. And he sat. After a long silence, he said gently, You know, people speak of Daniel's deliverance as if the miracle only happened in the morning. Joseph looked at him. But perhaps the greater miracle was that God stayed with Daniel all night. The room became still. Lydia's eyes filled. Mr. Boateng continued softly. The lions were real. The fear was real. The danger was real. Yet scripture says God shut the lions' mouths. He paused. Some of us are waiting for God to remove the den completely. But sometimes, his first mercy is sustaining us inside it. Lydia began to cry quietly, not because the suffering disappeared, but because someone finally spoke without blame. Chapter 8. The Night Watch. That night, Lydia checked on Kwesi before bed. He was awake. Mum? Yes? Do you think God still loves me? The question shattered her. She sat beside him immediately. Kwesi, listen to me carefully. He stared at the ceiling. You are not abandoned. But my mind, she interrupted gently. You are not your illness. Tears slid down his face. I scare people. Lydia's own tears came now. You are still my son. He covered his face. I am tired, she whispered. I know. Then she said the words she herself needed to hear. Daniel was still God's servant inside the lion's den. Kwesi looked at her slowly. You really believe God is still here? Lydia took his trembling hand. Yes. I believe he is in this room right now. Chapter 9. Redemption. Inside the den. People often think redemption only means escape, but redemption also means dignity preserved, faith surviving, love remaining, mercy appearing daily. hope breathing quietly, families refusing to abandon one another. The Mensa family began to understand this. Healing was not always dramatic. Sometimes healing looked like taking medication consistently, attending therapy, sleeping through the night, learning triggers, setting healthy boundaries, apologizing after difficult moments, asking for help, surviving another day without losing hope. The miracles became quieter, but no less sacred. Chapter 10. The morning after the lions. In Daniel's story, morning eventually came. The stone was rolled away. The king called out anxiously, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God able to deliver thee from the lions?" And Daniel answered from inside the den, "My God hath sent his angel." Daniel chapter 6, verses 20 and 22. Joseph thought about that often. Because many families living with chronic illness, disability, neurological conditions, psychiatric disorders, and long-term suffering are answering from inside the den too. And their testimony is not always, "We escaped immediately." Sometimes it is, "God kept us alive. God preserved our minds. God gave us strength. God sustained our marriage. God helped us endure. God sent mercy again this morning." That too is deliverance. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and share mercy daily. Every family in a den needs to know they are not alone. Chapter 11. Amma's Understanding. Months later, Amma wrote something at school. The assignment was, "What does courage look like?" Other children wrote about superheroes. Amma wrote, "Courage is my mother, waking up every day to care for my brother, even when she is tired. Courage is my father going to work after crying. Courage is my brother taking his medication even when he hates it. Courage is believing God still loves us even when life is hard." Daniel was brave in the lion's den because God was with him. I think our family is also brave. Her teacher cried reading it. Chapter 12. The conclusion. The family learned slowly. The family still prayed for complete healing. Joseph still prayed. Lydia still prayed. Alma still prayed. Kwesi still prayed on his clearer days. Nothing about faith disappeared, but something changed in how they understood suffering. They stopped interpreting every hard place as punishment. They stopped measuring God's love only by outward ease. They stopped believing the den meant abandonment, because Daniel's story proved something important. The den was not evidence that God had left. The den became the place where God revealed his presence. And perhaps many modern families need to hear this again. Chronic illness is not automatic rejection. Mental illness is not proof God has departed. Neurological conditions are not divine hatred. Disability is not worthlessness. The den is not the end of the story. Chapter 13. The mercy that stayed overnight. That night, Joseph stood at Kwesi's bedroom door listening to him sleep peacefully. The house was quiet. No shouting, no panic, no crisis, just breathing. Joseph closed his eyes. And for the first time in a long while, he did not ask, "Why us?" Instead, he whispered, "Thank you for tonight." Because mercy had entered the house again. Not loudly, not dramatically, but faithfully, like morning, like breath, like daily bread, like God sitting quietly beside his children in the den until dawn finally comes. Closing reflection. This story is for every family living with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, chronic illness, autism, disability, neurological conditions, dementia, depression, psychosis, long-term suffering, and hidden exhaustion. You are not cursed. You are not abandoned. You are not less loved by God. The lion's den was not Daniel's punishment. And your difficult place is not proof God has rejected you either. Sometimes the mercy of God is not the immediate removal of suffering. Sometimes his mercy is sustaining the family, preserving love, giving strength, protecting the mind, sending help, calming the night, providing one peaceful morning, keeping hope alive. And if mercy met your house this morning, if you slept, if you ate, if your child smiled, if your body held together, if your mind survived the night, if love remained, then God has visited your house again. My God hath sent his angel. Daniel chapter 6, verse 22. His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share mercy daily. Share this film with every family living in a den. You never know whose night you might change. Visit us every day at www.mothersfaith.xyz. This film was created by Susanna Sunday. A Mother's Journey of Faith, Autism, and Self-Discovery. Copyright 2026, Susanna Sunday. All rights reserved.